Hi, everyone. Guneeta here from the 1947 Partition Archive. Today, it's June 3rd, and I'd like to introduce you to a new series that we've just started called the 75 Days of Partition. It kicks off today. Today is day one, June 3rd. What's really interesting is that between June 3rd, when the Mountbatten Partition Plan was announced, and August 17th, when the Radcliffe Line was announced, it's exactly 75 days. And as a commemoration to the 75th anniversary of partition, we've launched this series that starts now called the 75 Days of Partition. So the first day is June 3rd. And what I'd like to do today is bring on an expert, Professor Rajmohan Gandhi, and talk about the significance of this date when the Mountbatten Plan was announced for the partitioning of the subcontinent. So please join me in welcoming Professor Gandhi. Okay, so Professor Gandhi, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love for you to explain to our audience what the significance is of June 3rd as being important for remembering partition.
Thank you, Guneeta, and thank you for giving me the chance to be with you and all the others who are connected to the archive, which is something that I very greatly admire and appreciate. Now, there are several dates associated with partition, and rightly so. On March 23, 1940, March 23, is when the Muslim League in Lahore passed their famous resolution asking for the separation of Muslim majority areas. Although the name Pakistan was not used, it is often regarded as the Pakistan Resolution of March 23. So March 23 is also a date involved with partition. Of course, India's independence was on August 15. Pakistan's independence was on August 14. So those two dates are also somehow connected to partition, August 14 and August 15. July 18 is another very interesting date, which most people don't remember. July 18 is the date of the Indian Independence Act, signed by the then King, George VI. So India and Pakistan, in a purely legal sense, came into being as a result of the Independence Act of the British Parliament of July 18, 1947. So some might say that July 18 also is a date that very significant when we're discussing partition. But I support your view and the view of others that June 3 is really the crucial date. Because June 3 of 1947 is not only when Mountbatten announced his plan, that is the date when the leaders of the Indian National Congress, the All India Muslim League, and leaders of the Sikh party or parties more or less accepted the June 3 Mountbatten's plan. So this was not only Mountbatten's plan, it was the acceptance of Mountbatten's plan. That is why June 3 is important. Now, this acceptance was not wholehearted. It was not, in fact, Jinnah even refused to sign, and Mountbatten had said to him that as long as you nod, I will take that as acceptance, and he nodded. And similarly, the Sikh leaders were also uncertain, but they did not object. So either by direct agreement or vocal agreement or written agreement, by refusal to or unwillingness to disagree, all the three principal Indian parties at the time, Indian National Congress, Muslim League, and the Akali parties, agreed with Mountbatten's plan of partition. That is why on June 3, at this significant meeting, that is why June 3 is rightly regarded as the date of partition.
Thank you for that explanation. And another question that I have is, how were the people of the subcontinent represented? How were their wishes represented at this meeting, or were they?
So now you Yours is a very interesting question, but you're asking how are the people of the subcontinent represented? So you are implying that today's people should have been represented in the deliberations of June 3 or the preceding deliberations. Well, that is not history. We should ask, how were the people of that time represented?
Yes, that's what I meant.
I'm sure you meant that. But but
I see what you're saying about the context. I'm using modern context.
Yes, no, because all of us have wishes on what should have happened. All of us would like to be represented in what happened in 47. But of course, that is not the way the world works. Today, we'll make many decisions in 2022, but generations to come will not be represented in the decisions we make today. So the question to ask, if I may modify your question, is how were the people of the subcontinent in 1947 represented? And of course, the clear answer is that the Indian National Congress, the Muslim League, and the Akalis, there were some other Sikh leaders associated with the Akalis who were not members of the Akalis, but they were also somehow involved. But that still left a great many people of the subcontinent. So like many decisions taken in history, decisions that affect many people are taken by not all the people involved, but by some people, very often representative groups of people, sometimes not representative. But all one can say is that at the time when reluctantly or not so reluctantly, these three major political groupings accepted the plan, by and large, the people at the time seemed to go along with it. Not with every detail, and afterwards, of course, people questioned it. But take, for instance, the Sikh parties. Sardar Baldev Singh of the Akali Party remained a minister of the Indian government for a long time, defense minister, after the agreement. So one could say that if he had reservations, those reservations were not strong enough for him to dissociate with the implications of the agreement. Many in India, many in Pakistan were not happy with many aspects of the June 3 agreement. I put it in a different way. The June 3 agreement represented not anyone's plan A, but it represented everyone's plan B or plan C. It was the only agreement, only plan to which the majority of the influential parties were willing to accept.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for that explanation, Professor Gandhi. Is there anything else you think our audience needs to know about June 3? Not
at this point, but I am very glad that you and this archive community, if I may describe it as such,
yes, definitely,
continue to be interested in this important question.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we are. And I'm excited that the city of Berkeley, where we were founded, has officially commemorated June 3rd as Partition Remembrance Day. So thank you so much. And we will see you again in another episode. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.